Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivanB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect, Quiver, and my patrons at patreon.com/ShivanB. Today, I'm really stoked, not even on Trent, but just generally speaking.
Dude, I'm out. Cut the call. I'm done. Save that one for when you start recording, I see. Unbelievable.
To have my dear friend Spice Hate Rack come back to hang out with me once again after we got to hang out in your own hometown of Bath, which was so lovely.
I know.
My God. My wife and son were so enamored, and they were like, we just want to move and live in Bath forever. This is the best. And I'm like, I would totally live in a Roman British city. That sounds like a plan.
It's a beautiful place to visit, 100%. And, you know, it's done me well. I don't live there anymore. There are reasons I don't live there anymore. But like one of the reasons is, you know, it's a beautiful place to sort of like grow up in and feel very safe and secure in. But it's also very much it's a bubble. And that can be a very nice thing. But it also can be a very a falsifying thing when you're not that things don't happen in Bath. I think we had our first Pride Parade last year, and we had it the second one ever, a second official Pride Parade in Bath happened this year, and that was a lot of fun to go on. And that was, you know, very radical and very grassroots. But yeah, it's a quaint little city. It doesn't feel like a city.
It definitely felt like a place out of time. It felt a little bit like 1960s era or something. It had this, like, because we went on a walking tour of the city, and the gent who was leading us on this tour was like, you know, he just felt like he was from an England of an entirely different era. And because, you know, he's an older man and everything, and he's like, yeah, you know, I'm a big fan of the Bath Rugby Sevens, and I'm like, great, love that for you, whatever. But the city definitely felt a little pastoral, not pastoral, maybe just like
pastoral
old.
Works, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a I mean, you weren't even there when they had all because normally if you're walking around like every other weekend, there's a bunch of Jane Austen cosplayers. Effectively, they wouldn't call themselves cosplayers; they call themselves reenactors. But they are Jane Austen cosplayers, and they wander around in their petticoats and their frocks and their top hats, and they drink tea and somehow don't get heat stroke constantly. But like, if you were to spend an extended period of time in Bath, I think you'd find quite quickly that the city is physically small, and that reflects in its character of what you can do and what potentialities exist within there. Which is, you know, not to say that things can't change, but I moved into, but it's always been the closest city to me ever since I was growing up. Grew up in a tiny village called Neston.
So you grew up in an even smaller place than that?
Yeah, I grew up in a one road village. I grew up in a tiny village called Neston. There were two places you could spend your money in Neston. One of them was a flower shop, which has since closed, and the other one is a pub, which I'm pretty sure is liquidated at this point. I grew up in like proper like
an actual village.
Yeah, like, you know, there's the chapel that you go to, and that was next to the local primary school. Very lucky to have a local primary school in the village.
Yeah.
It was very, you know, very, very pleasant place to be. But it was one road. You would enter Brockley's. That was the lane that you'd officially be in Neston, and then you go all the way down to Church Rise, and then down all the way towards, you know, Shepherds and Dammy Green and stuff like that. And then you'd come out the other side, and you'd be at the MOD and on your way to Corsham or Chippenham. It's a tiny, tiny place.
Those all sound like fictional places,
It
but like,
absolutely is. There's a place not too far away from me called The Shoe. It's wonderful. England is a fundamentally made up nation, as all nations are.
yeah, true fact. Um,
Mm,
it was just like I was astonished at the fact that London is like one of the world cosmopolitan cities. A great city. I really enjoyed my
mm,
time there. We were staying in a Bangladeshi neighborhood, which
mm,
was like the most bizarrely displaced nostalgic I've ever felt for a place, because I'm
mm.
walking around and all the stores are like open stalls, kind of like India, where they've got, the big Bengali titles or whatever, and they're all sweet shops or pawn shops or whatever, things that you don't expect to see outside of India proper. And
Yeah.
everybody's walking around in traditional clothing of hither and thither. I mean, they're more Muslim than Hindu, but like my
Mm.
flat was owned by a Hindu who was just like renting it out, and I'm like, I'm home, but it's weird because everybody was speaking English, and I'm like, I don't know how to process these two realities I'm in. We were right by
I
Brick Lane, which is so sick. But
Sorry, find it so funny that like of all of the complaints that exist in England, you've come to like the Bangladeshi neighborhood, and your main complaint is everyone's speaking English here. It's ridiculous. Love that absolute palate cleanse.
yeah, my son was like, man, do they speak American here? And I'm like, no, son, they speak English here.
They speak American. Oh, oh, bless his heart. He was an absolute delight.
He had such a good time because it was the first time in a real foreign country for him. And
Mm,
so, like, I mean, we've been to Canada and Mexico, and those are two very similar to America. Despite some cultural shifts, it's not that different. Like,
mm,
oh, we're in a place that speaks all Spanish. Great, it's just like elementary school, not a big deal. You know,
mm.
but like England proper was like, oh, this is like they drive on the wrong side of the road and use funny money and
Yeah.
speak very strangely here.
I mean,
Everybody
our
sounds like
money,
Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig. It's true. Our money used to be even more ridiculous. We
Yeah,
like decimalization was a big thing.
like
Um, yeah,
I
it blew
remember
everyone's minds.
what the hell they call them? Shillings,
Yeah, shillings and tuppence and
shillings and
threepence,
tuppence and weird,
halfpennies.
and none of it converted easily. It was
Oh
all like
no,
it's like 7.5 shillings to the 40th pence, and you're like, what the hell
yeah.
are you talking about? How do you
I
even
mean,
get
it's
these
it's
numbers?
the it's the currency version of what you call it, imperial
Imperial,
measurements of
yeah,
4 goes into 12, goes into 16, goes into 2, goes into 8, goes into 12, and not
yeah.
just
It's like, how many
10 goes
cups
into
are in
10
this
goes into 10.
tablespoon? Yeah, right. Who
Yeah,
knows?
who cares?
Who cares?
Make it up. Oh,
Seriously,
I'm so
I
glad you
bake
had
all
a
the
nice
time,
time.
and I refuse to use imperial measurements because
Oh,
I'm like,
you can't.
I just need grams, man. Don't mess with
No,
me.
for sure. I mean, I've always maintained cooking is an art, baking is a science.
Yes.
You can't be using apothecary lingo when it comes to especially pastry. Are you kidding me? You want to make a
Yeah,
decent
seriously.
like tray of what you call it, croissants? You can't be using cups and saucers or whatever the hell Queen Victoria came up with. You've got to
Yeah.
use millimeters.
No, seriously. It's got to be the same way every time, otherwise you're going to end up with some weird nonsense.
Yes, for sure.
Whereas cooking, I don't care. I use the palm of my hand. It's good enough. Put like
Absolutely.
two fingerfuls. It's fine.
Yeah. Little
um,
pinch of that.
yeah, seriously, whatever. It'll taste good. Um, oh goodness gracious, what was I even going to talk about? I had a thought,
I
and
don't
it
know.
just
I'm
like,
sorry. I fully derailed you with your holiday
yeah.
story.
Well, no, I'm just thinking about we had such a blast in your country, and it was so lovely. And like, yeah, Bath is very small. I would
Mm,
totally move to London though, because there's at least I would. That was one of the other things I knew. I knew objectively that England is full of South Asians. I
mm,
did not realize subjectively how ubiquitous we are all over the place.
mm.
Like we took a trip a day trip around Scotland and went to the far end somewhere by some loch in some little town, and we go into the little gift shop there, and the person running the gift shop is a small little like an Indian teenager, and I'm like, even here at the far end of this country where we do not belong, what? And she's like, look, man, I live here, and she's got the oh, dude. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story right now. And look, I
Hell
promise we'll
yeah.
talk about magic, but you guys don't care. You're just here for
Oh,
me to
we
talk
don't. We do
shit.
not have to talk about magic. Who?
Don't care. Who cares?
The audience wants to hear about Scotland. God damn it!
Dude, we were going around Scotland. My mother-in-law, she likes to knit and sew and do things. So we're like, we'll go to a Scottish fabric store and buy some cool local fabric things that she can do stuff with. And we
Oh,
walk
nice.
into this fabric store by the university, And inside, there's an Indian dude in flannel who's just like folding stuff, and a lady in a full Punjabi suit at the register. She's just handling it. I'm like, oh, cool, okay. Indians in fabric stores. It feels like a sari shop back in Bombay or whatever. It was cool, NBD. And then I go to her. I'm like, oh, have you guys been here for a long time? And she opens her mouth, and seriously, the thickest Scrooge McDuck Scottish brogue I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Like nearly incomprehensible levels of like deeply rural Scottish comes out. And I'm like, you're in downtown Edinburgh, first off. And secondly, I'm like, I was just like sunlocked. I could not. I'm like, beg your pardon? What's going on?
Sensational.
And my wife turns to me and she's like, idiot, you sound like a surfer. Why can't they sound like Scots people in Scotland where they, and she's like, yeah, I've run, me ma started this shop like 40, 50 years ago. And I'm like, God bless all of you guys. Reverse colonization is in progress.
Well, I remember in the brief period where, oh my God, I can't remember his first name, but Yusuf, the First Minister of Scotland. So he was First Minister of Scotland.
And Sunak was the Minister of England.
Sunak was Minister of England. They were having a conversation about like Scottish independence, and Yusuf being
he was part of the Scotland First Party or whatever.
Yeah, SNP, and then Rishi Sunak being a Hindu, and it being pointed out that at last Hindus and Muslims are discussing the partition of the United Kingdom. It's come full circle.
Good. Yeah, and the leader of Ireland at that time was Leo Varadkar, who's a half Indian too. And I was like,
yes,
we did it. We got the trifecta.
Yes, 100%.
We just need like a fine Indian Welshman to just go and
you guarantee you will. I mean, I'm not a particularly patriotic person in terms of like, the point at like throw a dart at a map, England has fucked it up, and throw a dart at a map. Throw a dart at a map, England has ruined it in some capacity. But like one of the things that is like that counter effect of in administrating a bloody global empire, you have, like, as you said, like people come to like are drawn to the metropole as a result. And now that the empire is, there's neocolonialism for sure, but the empire writ large is a dead thing. And you have, you've got the whole Windrush generation. You've got any number of Bangladesh, from India, from Pakistan, who've come here, who've like settled probably like centuries ago almost at this point. Potentially even longer than that. And it's great.
And like a lot of the people who came from Uganda and Kenya during like Idi Amin's reign, when they left England and when they left like the African countries and moved to England instead of going back to India. And like, because like if you go to Leicester and stuff, for instance, you will see a huge population of Gujaratis, my people from India, but they're all like double removed because their parents and grandparents were from Uganda and Kenya and those surrounding areas where the British people had imported Indians when the black people didn't want to do slavery anymore. And like they were like, we can't, we don't want to work on your farms anymore. We are free people now. And the Brits are like, well, I can't import dudes from Manchester. So how about Mumbai? And they bring all the Indians over and they're like, we'll just give you a lot of money and you get to live in a desert that's just like this one, but you farm for us. And all the Indians went and they made great lives. And then Idi Amin's like, the British people and the Indian people are taking all of our money and land and this is bad. You should leave. And he encouraged them with guns. And then it got really bad and they all fled. And England's like, fine, Uganda is your own problem. Go ahead. And they gave English citizenships to all the people there. And all of the Indian businessmen who lived in Uganda were just like, oh, you mean you're just going to give it to me for free to be able to move to your country for free? Done and done. Peace out. And so now there's a huge South Asian population in like the central Midlands and Northland of England, where just like a bunch of ex-Kenyan Indians live. 100%. And they're all part of my community, and it's kind of rad. They speak a weirdly different version of Gujarati than I do, which is just always fascinating to me. It's got peppered with Swahili words and stuff. But anyways, I wanted to go to see Leicester, just visit people, but it was on the wrong side of your country. It's very easy to go north and south in the UK and very hard to go east to west.
There's a very good reason for that. North and south is in one direction or another leads you to London. East to
Right.
west, unless you are on the one good east to west connection, is Bristol to London, because
Mm,
that is parallel. Everything
right.
else does not work like that. The only exceptions are if you're trying to get from like the Welsh coast, so the coast on the Irish Sea,
Mm,
into England. That east to west works reasonably well, but that's only if you're like linking in from like North Wales to
yeah.
Manchester to Newcastle. If you're trying
Sure.
to get from, oh God, I don't know. If you're trying to get from like Cambridge to like Haverfordwest or something like that, you're
Yeah.
laughing if you're getting a train all the way there. Like,
Right.
absolutely, you're
You
having a
might as
giggle.
well take the train to Newcastle and then get on a different train to come back south.
Well, I mean, one of the like there's a very interesting, and I say interesting, enraging map of the. Obviously, we used to have England was like crisscrossed with railway lines.
Mm,
It was the very much like the
yeah.
veins of the Industrial Revolution, and you had so many places that were connected to one another. Same with Ireland. But then when Thatcher came and all of these railways were now, all of a sudden, the job of them wasn't to connect communities and connect people together, but to ferry capital into a central metropole. You had towns that would have had one single railway connection with each other, now having the two northern towns up in Wales, I can't remember their name for the life of me right off the top of my head, but now rather than just taking a train from A to B, you have to take a
Mm.
train from A into England, into Manchester, down from Manchester to Birmingham, and then from Birmingham to B. So rather than like a 20-minute train ride, you now have to take a
Ah,
3-hour round trip fully out of the devolved
that's
nation of
so
Wales.
irritating.
Thatcher, so irritating. We
Yeah, I
got
mean,
that.
look, dude, she definitely she was not the greatest person of all time.
Yeah.
Certainly not the greatest minister England's ever had. Boy howdy was she just Reaganette over there. And like
Yes.
between the two of them, we definitely left a great and lovely legacy for nobody.
Mm,
Yeah,
yes.
that being said, I had a lovely time in your country. It was great. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I just thought it would be fun to talk to you again because it's been a minute since we've gotten to have a conversation, and it was so fun to just hang out and chill and chat. And I was like, oh right,
Yeah.
I like Spice. I'm just sad that we've
Oh,
missed
bless
each
you.
other the last handful of times we've hung out. You've come to the States,
Yeah.
but it's how it goes. Uh, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing a bit stressed. I can't lie to you.
Hmm.
There's on the work side of things, I'm working on a very, very big project at present, which I haven't released. Viewers and listeners may know I haven't put out a new video for 4 months, which
Yeah, that's
is, yeah, I think easily the longest between uploads. And I hoped it would be out by the end of August. That's just not happening, and I'm okay with that because it means I can wait until the end of September. I can miss all the Spider-Man. I was about to say a rude
stuff.
word. Spider-Man stuff. I
Yes.
can release it then, and all be well. But yeah, so I'm kind of stressed about that, both in terms of, pardon me, both in terms of I want to make sure that the video is as tight as it can be because it is on a very wide ranging amount of topics
Yeah, to
delving.
be fair though, every video you do is effectively a book length video. Like you're
This
doing
one,
like
yeah, yeah. I can't lie. I think I've gotten away from myself a little bit on this one. This is the longest script I've ever written.
oh goodness.
103 pages,
Jesus Christ.
34,000 words. I think I got to.
Those are
Um,
literal novels, dude. These are literal novel length books
I
you're
know.
writing.
What am I like? Eh? What am I
Like what
like?
are these theses you're putting together? But that's
I
the thing,
hope they're
like
not feces. I'll tell you that for nothing. I worked bloody hard on these ones. Um,
nail him to a
uh,
church door.
Yeah. Oh God, no! I can't be doing a Lutheran Reformation now. It's too late in my life. But no, and I actually want to get the what do you call it? I want to get my actual word count in front of me. Oh, this is an out of date one. That is several
Sure.
tens of. Anyway, it's many many pages. I've been working on that. I'm about an hour and 20, I think, edited through, and we've just passed the first chapter. And there are 4 chapters to the piece, so we'll see how the bones lie on that front. And then
is that going to be like another 4-hour banger or something?
oh, easily. Well, it would be another 4 hours. Whether it's a banger, that's its
Yeah.
own kettle of worms. That is for the ever loving audience to decide. I've sent the way that I work with my stuff. Anytime I write a new script, my patrons get to read the script.
Mm.
I oftentimes people will then leave feedback or point out errors and stuff like that. I've had a fair few really good piece of feedback from patrons, which aren't necessarily like, oh, this is wrong or this is right or anything like that, but more so, oh, you should look into this book or you should
Mm.
have a watch of this video or something like that. And that's always twigged me onto some really, really great, so like
Oh, I
asides
love
and
that.
tangents. Love it. Love my patrons. Every month that goes by when I don't release something, I'm so scared they're all going to leave me, and they've yet to do so. And more, hey, listen, bless their hearts for doing that. I am in constant apologia towards them.
You know what?
Yeah,
We folks like us, our lifeblood is the patrons, right? Like these
damn
are the
right.
people who keep us actually able to do this kind of absolute ridiculous nonsense. If we're being honest about what we get to do for a living,
Yeah.
real talk, like without the people who support us here, it is not a thing that is happening.
No, for sure. Especially
But yeah,
seeing as
actually,
I'm sorry, I was just going to say,
no.
especially with this particular video, I have purposefully not sought sponsors for it for
Oh.
reasons that will become abundantly clear should we continue to talk about its character and or when it comes out. But yeah, we're coasting on goodwill for this one.
What I was hoping, actually, the reason I wanted to talk to you is I was hoping that, well, I mean, aside from just wanting to talk to you, is that I was hoping we would actually be able to do that. We would actually be able to talk. What is it like to build one of your videos? Because they are monumental undertakings. It feels like they're all just like I sit here and I struggle with, like, I'm very good at off the cuff talking and just like this sort of, back and forth communication. But be careful with that. Yeah.
I picked up a bin and moved it. I think it was holding something together.
Yeah, it was like that was the bin that powers the planet, right? Like,
All right, I'm not touching that bin anymore. It's gone. All right.
Yeah. You might want to check this camera connection later.
Yeah.
But that being that being notwithstanding, I was hoping like I would love to know what your process is. How do you come up with this idea? And where do you go? Why are they so long? And how do you do this? Like, I don't know how to do that because I have a huge problem trying to actually come up. Like, I can talk for 5 hours if you give me a topic and just tell me to talk off the cuff. If you ask me to read even a paragraph long script, I will stumble and bumble and lose my way all the time. And you're sitting here reading literal. Sometimes it feels like, how like there was like the Royal Academy of Science or whatever, and some old man comes up and gives like a 4.5 hour long lecture where he's reading from this paper that he wrote. That sometimes, I mean, I'm not saying like you're like that, but I love listening to those, so it kind of is. It's kind of like, it just feels like you're presenting a paper at a conference, and that's really cool. I just don't know how do you conceptualize and put this together?
I mean, first off, bless you. Royal Society is what I'm going for, except cut the royal out of it.
Well, of course, yeah. My dear Marxist buddy, you're not going to get the Royal Society.
It depends on when a video is coming together. So, like, obviously, there are two kinds of videos that I make. It's the longer ones, my Tarkia video, my Duskmore video, the one I'm currently working on, the eugenics video, etc. And then there are the sillier ones, the Bumbleflower pre-com video talking about Jumpstart. Sometimes it's just there's a thing in Magic which I want to talk about, and that's where the thought ends. And most Magic the Gathering content creators do that exact thing of, oh, I want to talk about, oh my god, I can't remember the name of the YouTuber off the top of my head, and I'm very, very sorry, but they put a video out. You might remember it. It was a deck tech on a legendary creature from Dominaria United, whose ability was like artifacts you control have tap, add green to your mana pool. And what they've done is they made a cool deck tech where they turned it into a Voltron commander. You play your equipment, tap it for mana, use the mana to attach your equipment to her. She punches face. Like, interesting kind of like deck stuff like that. Most Magic the Gathering content creators like work on.
I mean, that's like default, right? Like, it's like set reviews or like deck techs.
Yeah,
and gameplay videos.
that is the trifecta for sure. When it comes to things that go beyond that, it depends. We're aware of like top down and bottom up design in Magic, right? And it's very similar. Yeah, it's very similar to like the way that I approach a video topic of like the Yawgmoth video, for example. I would say that was a very sort of like that was a very top down piece where I wanted to talk about. I suddenly had this platform. I have political opinions to say. Yawgmoth is just who. Well, see, at that point, I was calling myself a socialist, and I would now consider myself to be a heinous liberal. Past me, my goal is to every like 3 years that goes by, I would spit in the face of the person that I was previously. That's how I want my political journey to go. But that video is like I've got things I want to say when it comes to the pseudoscience that is race. I want to like talk to people about because obviously this was sort of culminating in this was still 2019 if I'm being correct. So this was sort of like tail end of Trump uno numero, and this was coming off of the back of seeing a lot of Charlottesville protests, all that stuff. Sorry, protests. I'm not going to give them that. Charlottesville Nazi rallies, and wanting to like really make a splash in my corner of the Magic space and just be like, hey, Nazi free zone. And it's not just because I think Hitler's scary, but I've read books and I understand that like the fundamental follies of your heinous ideology, etc., etc. Sure. So like that's like a top down, and Yawgmoth got previewed. It's like perfect. This is a great time to talk about magic lore and trick people into learning some shit. And trick people. Sorry.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You will get the Tapico cross exemption.
I'm gonna do the clean one anyway, and trick people into learning some stuff. Then you've got the bottom up, which is Duskmorn, which I still think is the best video that I've made. Genuinely, which is I like horror. We've got a horror set that's coming out. Let's just talk about it. Let's analyze this set, and then that led me on to. Because as I'm sure you're aware, most of the books, indeed like the whole stack of books next to me right now, all of it is mostly about philosophy, politics, economics, etc., etc. There's some literary criticism in there, but it's usually through the lens of like how literature is produced and not necessarily the meanings behind it. That all stuff just comes from my noggin. So with that, I was like, let's get into some actual like horror theory. Let's and not just horror theory, but like. Let's delve into, movie making, because this is a set based around films, effectively, short films from the 80s.
Did you read any Roland Barthes?
No, I did not. I must admit. I read the books I read. So I started with, it came from, no, I didn't start with It Came From the Closet. What did I start with? I started with, oh my God. It's, Monsters in the Closet. Very similar names. But it was about film theory, queer theory, and horror as well, horror theory. And I found the writing in there very compelling, particularly when it came to discussions of during the AIDS epidemic, how queer people, gay men, were being likened to vampires, and the sort of like the circular logic that or these. If we're going into like light Marxist theory, you've got the cultural superstructure, you've got the economic foundation, like material conditions. The material conditions, the cultural superstructure therein was like, oh, vampires are associated with blood. They're evil monsters, likening them to gay men. And then from that, culture takes a tiny bit of time to catch up. There's a tad of a delay on it. Suddenly we get this big influx of like queering vampires and vampirism through a queer lens being presented in cinema and then being analyzed in a through a queer lens. And I found that particularly interesting because Duskmorn, to me, as I was experiencing it, was this. It's this sort of like the Baudrillardian like simulation of culture.
I love Baudrillard so much.
Great, wonderful person.
Oh my God, one of my absolute favorites.
Writer, even. I don't know about his personality.
Yeah, I mean, he could well have been just a complete douche nozzle, but he
was French, so we do have to. we do have to be careful. But like this idea of like what Duskborn is, it's a simulation of people's memories of what not this culture looks like, but what this culture is remembered to be, all through the lens of like non-problematic modern interpretation of past culture, right? Like, you know, your like just Stranger Things, right? Of like taking the 80s, filtering it through a way that's going to be palatable to like a mainstream modern audience, with, you know, the edges rounded off for better and for worse, both in terms of like people then having this false memory of what that era actually represented, but also like acknowledging that it's not cool to just have, you know, sexist jokes, racist jokes, etc., as like the background radiation of your art.
Yeah.
So that was its own thing. And so building up from that video was beginning just wanting to talk about Duskmorn, coming off of the back of my Death of the Future video, talking about you know, what magic represents now, this sort of like hauntological approach to culture. We're just seeing this echo of a dead culture over and over again, and then seeing how that was being like actively fought against by the world building and the writing team, and really wanted to like delve into one of the greatest like compliments I think I've ever gotten was Shannon Maguire actually like shared my video, and I think, can't remember her exact words, but said like, do you ever encounter it where someone like is analyzing your work and just hits the nail on the head? A huge compliment for to hear Shannon Maguire being the writer of the Duskmorn stories by and large.
Yes.
Someone who I grew up reading and didn't realize I grew up reading until I started making the video and typed in Shannon Maguire into Google to get a picture of get one of her pictures, and it's like, oh crap, it's the person who wrote Feed. I read that growing up. That's nuts. And now like I'm getting compliments on my analysis of their work.
I love that.
Such great vibes. But like that's, so like we got top down, we got bottom up. The video that I'm currently working on is strangely a mixture of both, in the sense that I've been wanting to make this video since 2020. And indeed, I addressed that in the opening of the video. I talk about how in 2020, me and my housemate Rowan, we were started to watch the Snowpiercer TV show. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it, but I know what it is.
Fair. It's got Daveed Diggs in it. It's crap. Truly, I listen. Daveed Diggs utterly killing it in clipping. Every single thing I've seen him act in needs to go away, except for Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I did enjoy him in that. But
he was really good in Hamilton.
I have my own qualms. We don't need to delve into that
like,
right now.
You know, I'm not saying that we can discuss the nature of the story or whatever, but just in terms of performance, the raw performances that were in that were phenomenal. That being notwithstanding, that's a different conversation.
That is a different conversation. Hamilton is brought up in the current video that I'm working on. But I digress. Save that for the actual like release. This one, I've been wanting to make this video for ages. But each time I started to tackle it, I didn't feel like I knew enough. Or I started writing one thing, I'd go away from it.
If you can't create because you don't know enough, you will never create.
Well, this is the thing, right? Like it's there becomes that like point of diminishing returns where, and I realized this when I was writing this video, I mean, I could show you, the listeners won't be able to see, but like I've got, that's what 5 books there. There's about 20 down here. That represents maybe half of the books that I've read for this video. Some of these are ones that I've read for other pieces, others that I've just read in my own time that became useful. Others, Peter Gelderloos, The Failure of Nonviolence, Counter-Revolution of 1776. Lacerdo is a absolute nightmare to read because he's so well read. I don't understand half of what he's talking about. But this is a book that I bought for my anarchism video, started reading it, didn't understand it, cracked the spine for this video, and was overwhelmed with joy when I realized I actually knew what he was talking about now when I was reading it.
There's something about gaining context and then gaining knowledge and then going back and being like, oh my God, you understood. I was not there, but you were waiting for me.
Yeah, 100%. So like,
that's why I'm telling you, like, before I forget, I really want you to look up Roland Barthes and read his book Mythologies, which is a 1957 compilation of essays that he wrote. He was a French critic Barthes. And
Yeah,
in
thank you.
this, he took he was big in the schools of semiotics and structuralism, alongside people like Saussure and
Mm,
Derrida,
mm,
and he wrote like his essays. The first essay in the book is about the nature of professional wrestling and like the art and artifice inherent within. And I think you would actually gain a lot from just reading some of these essays, because
mm,
even though it was circa 1957, it's still, there's a lot of really deep thought in there.
mm.
It's one of
Wonderful.
my favorite just critical anthologies that I've gotten to read over the time.
I will give that a read. I've just finished blasting through K-Punk, which actually is here, funnily enough, which is this tome. It is
Goodness.
the collection of the late and great Mark Fisher's blog posts, writings, articles, all that stuff. Find it absolutely fascinating. Fisher, and also because it's 2004 to 2016, you can really see his craft develop and his like
Mm-mm-mm.
language improve. It's fascinating to read. But yeah, I'll give Roland a proper look see.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the process
Anyways,
of this,
continue.
yeah, the process of like making a video, it goes on one of two angles. With this, the opportunity with the Indigo Revolution, which is the sort of like world building element of Avishkar that changed it from
Yes.
Kaladesh to Avishkar.
Yes.
Like huge opportunity to like tie magic lore, magic writing, world building to actual like living revolutions, right? Both living and historical, and sort of
That
examine how we examine it.
being able to go to the magic design team when like they came to me and they're like, "Hey, what do you want to see in the
Yeah,
new Kaladesh if we go back?" And I was like, "Well, you can't call it Kaladesh, you know." And like there were three of us, three South Asians who play magic, who have been loud about this commentary, and they had a conversation with all of us, and we spent like, they were thinking we would be talking like, "Oh, no elephants or whatever." No, we gave them like a 3 hour, just like we gave them like a lecture on racism, on classism, on the inherent like the soft racism that was built into that set that they didn't even
mm,
understand, and the microaggressions of playing a 7-Eleven guy and having somebody go, "Thank you,
yeah,
come again," etc. And they're like, "We can't change the name, because like we've paid money, we own
yeah,
it's all over the world and branding." And I'm like, dude, the second set of the thing is called Aether Revolt. What happens in revolutions? You change the flag, you change the name.
yeah.
And do you see Doug Byers' eyes light up? And
Mm,
he just goes deep into thought, and he's like, "I will get back to you." And then they
yeah,
come back, and suddenly we have we were given a bunch of choices, and I gave my okay on which one they wanted. And we have now Avishkar. And
I love.
I think of that as one of my great triumphs in Magic.
No, for sure, and kudos to you. Honestly, like I think
Yeah.
that like I can't wait for people to see this, like the analysis that exists. I also had with this video had a wonderful chat. I won't reveal who, but someone who was attached as well to
Mm.
the world building, the inception of Avishkar. I can't wait for like I'm really excited for people to see how. I think one of the things that always frustrates me with Magic is that whenever I make a video about the lore,
Mm.
so many people are like, "Oh, I had no idea," and it kills me because
Yeah.
people like people keep complaining that like Magic is becoming something that it's not. Right? It's all Final Fantasy now, and it's all tie-ins and yada 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 yada. But the thing that makes Magic Magic is the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the original world building, and if you don't engage with that and you don't care for that, or you are waiting for someone to tell you what the story is as opposed to going and experiencing it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then Magic is only further incentivized to move away from that and into things that people just inherently recognize. I think that
Yeah.
like Aether Drift is Aether Drift. I barely talk about the set Aether Drift just because it's so categorically divorced from the most interesting world building elements of it.
It
I say that in the sense of like the cards, but not the notion of a race is really well intertwined with the world building. But like
yeah.
the death
But that's
race
the
in of
thing. Like,
itself is not the
look,
interesting part
after
of it.
the amount of work that I saw the world building team did, and that I even helped with the world building team to do,
Yeah.
and like the amount of development and like background lore and like just the details of what does graffiti look like in a Devanagari font with, all this
Yeah.
little stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, they've built such a beautiful and enriched and hugely deep world where they're really wrestling with what it means to give up, to revolt and rebuild society. And in the cards, literally none of it shows
Yeah.
up. And
We're literally racing away from it.
I'm
It's
like, you are killing
blurred
me.
in the background. I
Oh my god.
know. I know. And it's the same with Duskmourn. One that
Yeah.
I love the world building of Duskmourn's fascinating. The
Yes.
writing is gripping. It's got some of the best imagery that I've read in Magic Story in a very, very long time.
Right.
And yet
We get Chainsaw.
People just perceive that. They go, "What's on the card stock? Oh, it's that. I'm not interested." And it's like that is fine in of itself, but God, it would be such a beautiful thing if just more effort was put by the company to get the story out in front of people's faces. They've started doing that with like putting the story into audio form on their YouTube channel. I think that's a grand move. Like very happy to see that. But I miss. I think I truly do miss when, like, I remember when Battle for Zendikar was being previewed, and you'd wait on tenterhooks for the next hook of the story, because not only would the next hook of the story like have a whole host of unique art, but also that would be the story that would reveal this card or that card or this card. And that still happens to a certain degree in Magic Story. I think it happened a lot more with Edge of Eternities, if my memory is if my memory is correct on that one. But like I wish that we still had this desire to see where things are going, and I think some of that desire has been lost because of how mishandled the story has been in recent memory.
Well, I was talking to Jay and Ellie the other day on. And Jay was we were talking about how there was like the original golden age of story from like Origins through Ixalan, where we cared every day. Like it's like they would drop a new story and then the entire Vorthos community on Twitter or whatever would explode, and we would have days of discussion breaking down what's going on and figuring out and reading and the stories were written with the love of language and with the poetry and the motion, and like you felt this vibrancy. And then they just yanked the rug and dropped us into the pit and like completely killed the community dead, right? Like completely killed the community dead. And I think it's only now that we are starting to finally rebuild and get like some kind of flow again, because the stories are very good. The stories are great. So good.
Yeah.
But it's just like we need to get people to care again. And it's hard when you like rug pull them and they're just like, well, how do I know you're not just going to like, vaporize it?
Yeah. It's also difficult to get people to care, I imagine, because if people perceive Magic is 50-50 Universe and Beyond right now. That's just the truth of the matter. Now that Universe and Beyond is in standard, every other set is going to be a Universe and Beyond set. That's just how the game is now. It's difficult. It's difficult even for me, someone who like made their entire channel to talk about Magic lore, to really be invested in the direction that the lore is going, when I know for a fact that every other month I'm going to be completely bamboozled by the fact I have to think not about what Nicol Bolas is up to now, or think about what the End Stone represents for the greater Magic canon, but I've got to contend with the Spider-Man card's a bit weird, isn't it? Like that I just have to kind of deal with that. And I understand why people move away from the story. I'm trying my best to like highlight the good
you're fighting
that
a good fight, man.
I don't know. I think with something that like whenever I'm making a video like this, there is the goal of like trying to shine a light on an element of Magic that I think deserves attention, and then there is the secondary goal, which is the the propagandist in me of I want people to understand this element of theory, understand this element of the news, understand this element of history, etc., etc. And with this one, I think it is a lot more of the latter, simply because we talk about Aether Drift, we absolutely do, and we talk about how media generally represents revolution. It's Western media, I should say, because my frame of reference for non-Western media is unfortunately very, very limited, particularly revolutionary non-Western media.
Yeah, it's hard to get, man.
It's true. I mean,
the governments don't like to have that stuff hanging around.
You can watch Sergei Eisenstein's October on YouTube for free. It's long, but it's interesting. It's really like I was about to go into a whole thing about like the invention of montage. We don't need to go into that. That's in the bloody video. But like when it comes to like making a thing like this, I found that I just kept adding stuff, and it was a lot harder to edit things down simply because in Duskmorn, for example, if I'm making an argument, if I'm making an aesthetic argument, I'm making an argument about the interpretation of art or the symbolism that I'm drawing from X, Y, and Z, that can be a subjective thing that we can have like a pleasant conversation about. With this video, when I'm talking about how fictional revolutions and their depictions compare to actual revolutions and their historical understanding, that's a thorny subject. Many people are obviously incredibly invested in both the realization of and destruction of revolutionary processes, movements, and even memories. And lots of people as well have a very negative and very positive associations with revolutions that aren't necessarily always borne out 100% in like an objective account of the facts, and more so where they grew up or what their parents told them, and what they remember hearing about what it was like as. And one of the elements of this video is like talking about, how revolutions are unremembered in the sense that both the good and the bad are pretty much like truncated from one another. And this idea that everyone who stood against some revolutionary process was like, a secret fascist or a counter-revolutionary in and themselves, as opposed to, someone who is negatively impacted by a policy enacted in the name
or is fighting for their own ideology, right? Like
100%. But also on the other hand of it, the people who uphold all revolutions as a failure and what we have now is pretty much as good as we're going to get, really unpicking both the folly of thinking that human nature is this inherently competitive, cutthroat, nasty business, but also pointing out the ironclad connection between, the modern liberal tradition and fascism. There's a phenomenal book that I was reading called The Apprentice's Sorcerer, which is this account going through a whole host of different historians and their analysis, both at the time of the rise of Mussolini and Nazi Germany, but also sort of in retrospect. It was published, I think, back in 2013, I think it was, and about how the liberal tradition gave birth to fascism, how fascism wasn't this sort of like new and strange system, but was the logical, in some ways, conclusion of modern capital. So like trying to hold both these two things in our heads of like, and also how we represent revolutions as these triumphalist, perfectly ideal things that are either presented as, if you think about like Star Wars, right? Like there is an objective good and an objective bad, and the objective bad doesn't actually stand for anything other than power, and the objective good doesn't really stand for anything other than the objective bad not having power, and that really simplified version of revolution, so that people can experience and engage in like interpassivity, can feel like they're engaging revolutionary activity without having to change their thought process. Or when revolutions are presented either in sort of like history fiction, or in the case of like the Snowpiercer TV show, this fictional revolution being unpicked by a writer almost always falls into this sort of like Animal Farm miasma of, yes, the old system was bad, but if we rock the boat, it can get worse, folks. So don't just stick with how it is, so like that kind of angle.
It's interesting you bring this up because I've been reading. So one of my favorite fantasy authors is a guy named Stephen Bruce. Stephen Bruce has been writing this series about this assassin named Vlad Taltos.
Mm,
It's like a mafia. It starts out as a mafia story of this human living in an elf kingdom, and there's magic and whatever. And he is a small time assassin working for this house of like this mafia house of these houses that work in this imperial system.
mm,
And he goes around and he got this job because he liked beating up elves because he grew up a racial minority in this society. And over the course of these books, you see him start to analyze and think about what does it mean as a poor person to prey on other poor people, as a minority to prey on other minorities, and be like, oh, you know what? I'm treating I've got fair rates for the loan sharks that I've got going on, or whatever. And his wife, who is a reformed assassin, or rather a retired assassin, she is also human, and she goes to the human ghetto in this world and joins up with a revolutionary group that is passing out pamphlets and saying, you know, power to the people and uplift. It's like because Stephen Bruce is himself a card-carrying Marxist, and his parents were Hungarian communists who escaped the Holocaust and came here. He's been a member of like the United States like communist and Marxist parties for decades, and
mm,
he writes this fascinating tale because his hero is inherently not for the revolution and is very much like giving you the same thing like, oh, look, man, you guys are going to go and yell slogans at each other and then we're all going to go and get killed by the Empress. This is just going to fail. And he writes like his actual philosophy from the side of the antagonists of this book, who are like the people who are writing it. And
mm,
it's a very interesting notion of like, what does it mean to try to be a revolutionary in a system where status quo is easier, or where like
mm,
you can't upend the world because there's a divine thing holding it in place? What does revolution mean in a fantasy setting? And this just takes it, this like train he follows for like the next, I don't know, 12 or something books of just trying to understand how to take this apart and what does it mean. It's really interesting to try to understand like when you're dealing with fiction like we're talking about, and you've got these worlds where it's very black and white, or very much like there is a god and there is a system and there is a divine order that is in place to make this magic work. What does the people like? And it's like you sit there and you're playing D&D and you're like, why are there goblins in this dungeon? Why am I just killing them all the time? Maybe they have a goblin village somewhere and would like to not be killed. And
mm.
it's these are questions that were unexamined for generations worth of writers. And it's interesting now to sit there and look at people and actually sit there and say like, what are we doing? What are these stories we're telling? How are
Yeah.
we getting from here to like, how does this contra with the life that I'm actually trying to live and the message I'm
Mm.
trying to convey? And I don't know, I think
I
there's I don't know if we have an answer yet, but it's interesting that
I
people
mean,
are asking the question.
I think the thing is, and what you're getting onto, and I'm being fully unironic when I say this. I'm not doing this as like a bit or a self caricature. Marxism is one of the greatest tools that I have used for my own D&D campaign, specifically this notion of historical materialism,
Mm,
and this idea that in analyzing just the base functions of society, how society operates, why it operates the way it does. I'm
mm,
starting at your, base principles of how do people achieve safety, like shelter? How do people get food? How do people do that? And thus building from there. How is society organized as a result? What is the social structures that developed as a result of that to reflect it? How are those social structures pushing forward or holding back those that base of like economy? That it's you can tell when someone even unknowingly is engaging in that like historical materialism in their own writing, in their own world building, and when they've just had this cool idea and they haven't really interrogated what's holding it up. And I think one of the things
mm.
that I find very interesting about the writer that you just mentioned, could you say his name again? Sorry?
Stephen Brust,
Stephen Bruce.
Brust.
Fan-dabby-tastic. Thank you ever so much. One thing I think is very interesting there is like in interrogating the systems that you are creating as an author, you can ironclad them. And in trying to explain those systems from the perspective of someone who is against changing them and is slowly, I don't know, obviously this the full narrative, but is
Yeah.
slowly being encouraged to think differently. You can you in the same way that all of us growing up, especially if we're growing up in the West, all of us grow up thinking that the status quo is the norm, it's the common sense, this,
Right.
Gramscian theory of social hegemony and all that. It's only when you begin to like ask questions as to why things are the way they are that you can change the world. And
Right.
unfortunately, lots of the main sort of like cultural juggernauts at present of Western media, but also like Western political rhetoric, are either the juggernaut of yes, things are bad, and it's the immigrants, and it's the transes, and it's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or
Mm.
it's no, things aren't bad, shut up. And
Mm.
obviously, there's the third option, which is no, things are bad, and it's because of the whole economic and class system in which we live. But
Mm.
that is a threat to what both of these juggernauts want, the two previous juggernauts, right? Neither wants to change the actual base system. One of them just wants the system to continue as it is, as present. And the other one recognizes that unless something gives, the system will be collapsed with some kind of revolt. So they may as well scapegoat, right? It's a tale as old as time.
Mm.
So I'm always fascinated by media that tries to push against that in some way, be it mass or be it independent media. And that's one
Right.
thing that I loved about Aether Revolt. And one thing I talk about in the video is the fact that like it presents the not Aether Revolt, Aether Drift. It
Yeah.
presents the revolution of Aether Revolt as a failure. But it doesn't do it. It doesn't present it as a failure in the way that pretty much every other mainstream revolutionary narrative presents a failed revolution, which is either
Right.
turns out the revolutionaries were evil all along and just wanted money on power, or
Mm.
oh, it was going to work, but oh, the ideals just didn't match up with what was possible. God dang it! I guess we'll try again next time, or maybe don't. The Indigo Revolution saw the Aether Revolt, which effectively created this reformist consulate on the plane that would become Avishkar. They
Mm.
didn't solve their problems. It just ended up with a lot of bickering. Even in the world building, it says that both progressive and reactionary pillars formed. So there is, there's an alternate timeline effectively where Avishkar is currently being ruled by a fascist government.
Yeah.
Some like a Videlcan
Vidalcan overlord.
Mussolini. Exactly. What's his face? Baral comes
Dovenbon.
back. Yeah. Who isn't dead? Dovenbard, who isn't dead.
Yeah.
But like it presents that as a failure. But the answer to well, what is to be done next isn't revolutions fail, therefore we should have stuck with what we had. It's we need to push the revolution further. We've had
Right.
we've had a political revolution that has displaced who is at the top, but we haven't changed how the top works. We need a social revolution to fundamentally rework how society operates. And I
Yeah.
love that because like Aether Revolt, the revolution that did exist there was like what did the consulate want with all of the artificers'
In,
inventions?
yeah.
What did they want? Like I'm genuinely asking, as like, do
Right.
you know?
I mean, as far as I know, they were collecting everything for Tezzeret to be able to go and take ultimate power by building a bridge and doing whatever he's doing. Like
100%. Yeah,
he was
they
the machination behind the whole thing, right? So
yeah. So Tezzeret wanted the planar bridge. That's the only thing he wanted. Rashmi's planar bridge. He
yes.
convinced Dovenbarn in a conversation with Dovenbarn to like, no, go along with this, organize the consulate to seize everything. And his pitch was, oh, but it's not safe for these people to have their stuff. We can use it for the betterment of society. Like really thin veneer that he didn't actually mean. He was only saying that so that there would be enough confusion that he could nick the bridge, right? And the
Mm.
bridge was there to help Nicol Bolas achieve ultimate power. So
Right.
it was a revolution. Sorry, it was a crackdown to get power, but not even power in the plane, power for someone else. So it's this really like very, very surface level notion of like, why do bad people do bad things? Well, it's
Right.
so that they can have power. Why do they want power? So that they can continue to have power. And
Mm.
obviously, lots of bad people do want power in our real world, but very rarely do they want power for its own sake. It's
Yeah.
for legacy building, or it's for ideological zealotry, or it's for, in the case of Trump,
Yeah.
just like fully enriching himself and avoiding jail time.
Mhm.
But like without that interrogation of why it is that the systems that exist continue to exist? Why do they fight so hard for their place on top of the pyramid, as it were? The revolutionary elements also can't form an ideology, and that's the thing that really frustrated me in Aether Revolt. You have all this great revolutionary imagery. Even this came out first day of. Fun fact: I don't know if you're aware of this. Aether Revolt released the day of Trump's inauguration. And
fun fact, I know, because I was going to be like hyping it and sharing all of the cool stuff, and then the inauguration happened, and I was so depressed that the new state of fascism in my country that I just did not want to engage with optimism.
Yeah.
And like, because the thing is, one thing about Aether Revolt, Aether Drift rather, is that it's not just the story of Avishkar trying to rebuild after the revolution. It is that Amonkhet itself is also societal rebuilding and trying to reintegrate and see what happens when they overtop a dictator or a dictatorial system that has been destroying them. How do we rebuild a system? What does it mean? And like, they're trying to integrate mummies back into society. Well, they're not our slaves anymore. What does this like? They didn't get a lot of chance to interrogate it, but the seeds are there. And I think it's so fascinating. It's like, God, and all we got was stupid card jokes.
Yeah, and Mario Kart references. I think the thing that you're right, it's this very optimistic set, and we need revolutionary optimism as well as revolutionary realism. But one thing I find very, very interesting, which I don't know is going to make the cut of the video, just because it's so bloody long, but there are these consistent elements in Avishkar's narrative which just point towards just little failures, little gaps that the revolution hasn't fixed, right? Like, for example, in the actual death race in Aether Drift, the Gyropur Grand Prix, they're in Muruganda, right? And it's pretty apparent the people who live in Muruganda aren't super jazzed by just a raceway being in their land, and they attack the raceway. And, you have representatives from the kings or whatever it is of Muruganda who have been talking with the people of Gyropur, being like, no, it's going to be fine, don't worry, come race through. And then you have the actual people who live there attacking, the races.
Yeah, and go like, excuse me, what are you doing?
Yeah, precisely, right? And there's that element of, Avishkar's had this revolution. It's trying this new soft power play. Isn't that interesting? But it's still replicating this sort of, supremacy is the wrong word, exceptionalism of, we are going to build this raceway through your land for our benefit, and it doesn't really matter whether or not you want that to happen. And that's interesting. Like, there are bits like in the story, Sita's father is this horrifying reactionary aristocrat who still has servants, who still has a mansion. His wealth is melting away, but
India has been a democracy for 60 years, and there are still kings.
Yeah, 100%. Like,
there are still royal families in these cities. They just never left their palaces. They've still got servants and things.
These are the things which I love, because again, you have this triumphalist perspective of revolution, which is like, it's either all or nothing, either in fiction and in life, right? In fiction, it's like, if the good guys don't have a total victory, it's, the revolution is doomed. We should never have done it. Same with in reality, when you look at for all of the grave, both grave missteps and just outright atrocities committed by any number of revolutionary governments, the positives that have been achieved or were achieved with, even in modern days with the Cuban Family Code, for example, which would not have happened under the Batista government by any stretch of the imagination. Those things must be taken with the failures in order for us to learn from that. And so we can look at Avishkar and go, there has been great victories that have been made, but there's still room for it to get better, as there always will be. It's this very real feeling revolution. It feels lived in. It feels like an ongoing process, right? It feels like and I talk about this in the video again, but there's this chief disagreement in what socialist. This is back in the 1950s, so around the Sino-Soviet split, about what socialism even was. And you had I'm really reducing this down. This is what Emmanuel Wallerstein writes, who's not a Marxist himself, but very Marxian. socialism from the perspective of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union is this like fixed state of being that all nations will eventually get to, right? It goes capitalism, socialism, communism. And socialism is when you've reached these things and we've reached socialism and we're moving on to communism next. Whereas the Communist Party of China's, their disagreement with it was socialism is part of this continual struggle, this continual process of development. We're not like socialism is not a stage. It's not like a set thing that you get to, but far more so this constant fight to ensure that the wins of yesterday aren't backed away from and that we keep building on from them. It's one of the reasons why like most Marxists today like continue to talk about this notion that should socialism be like achieved, whatever that might look like in the West, it will be a constant struggle. Class struggle will still exist. Of course it will. There will be things that are hangovers, like, you know, the hyper patriarchal family structures, which then bled into industry and even government in the Soviet Union, which were hangovers from the days of the Tsar. That didn't go away overnight. And also, like, you look at the repression of like religion that existed in the USSR. Like in contrast to the in contrast to the like Marx's writing of religion being the opiate for the people, the soul of a soulless world, not saying that religion is a drug meant to dupe the masses, but more so it's a painkiller. It's a way for people who are not happy in of
nobody
realities.
ever reads the full quote.
No one ever does. Well, it's like when people bring up 18th Brumaire and it's like, oh, when Marx said the weight of dead generations hangs like a nightmare on the brains of the living, as a means of like dissuading people from remembering, like, you know, the Soviet Union or, you know, the French Revolution. It's like, no, he wasn't writing that. That wasn't what he meant. He meant that it is impossible for men to make history as they please. You are built on what came before you. It's impossible to get away from that. And you have to do your best to overcome that and to change that. And it will not be in one lifetime. Certainly not. Sorry. No, I do. You go ahead.
Well,
I apologize. I realized I was just monologuing there, mon frere.
Oh, brother, I was listening. I mean, I'm sorry, sibling. I was just listening and enjoying. And I'm just like, you know, I'm here to roll with it, whatever we're doing. Because, like, the thing is, the thing I really appreciated is the summation of what you said, which is that these people are treating revolution as a moment in time that is an extensible, buildable moment, as it's not an endpoint unto itself. It's not, hey, everybody revolted and now we're all happy. I mean, the fact that Sita's dad is literally just like an old time aristocrat and, like, you know, government official who is griping about the fact that 2 weeks ago he had power in an office and now he doesn't. And I'm like, this is the real world, right? This is how it works. When we have a revolution, there are always like, when systems of governance and leadership and rulership change, you will always have people who still cared about the old status quo. That's I mean, look at England's own history, where you've got like, oh, the Catholic king comes in. Well, all the Protestants who were in nobility didn't suddenly switch over to Catholicism. They were just pissed and gripey and waited until it was their turn to take over again. You know, and like in India, you see this too, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, I mean, the problem in Kashmir right now is entirely due to the fact that the revolution happened and the king decided he wanted to belong to one country and the citizens wanted to belong to a different country, and now we've got this problem. And it's like nothing is flips on a dime. It is a fully, like, there will always be chunks of the past. Like, what is it, William Gibson's statement, the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed. And that means that the past is also here, and it is still, if like, it's not just like there's a clean cutoff where these two lines meet and this one stops and this one starts. It's like there's jagged edges here and we have to interlock them, and we will find our way to connect and move forward. Eventually we'll get there, but we're still going to have the lingering essence of the past behind us. And
100%.
It's so... I'm glad that Wizards decided to go that way with this set and at least give you the seeds of building forward into the future. Like, we don't know what this is going to look like. The people who live in Girapur don't know what it's going to look like. They're like, we're just trying a bunch of things and we're building soft power and we'll see where it goes. And I'm like, I love that.
I do, and like I give credit to the writing team. There's, as I said in the video, talk to someone who's on the world building team. There are things that they wanted to put in that they couldn't, and I think a lot of that came from the fact that like it is, no matter which way you cut it, it's the race car set. And as a result, there couldn't be cards which like displayed how the new democratic processes of Girapur actually operated. We couldn't see the Girapur Soviet in action, unfortunately.
I mean, real talk, fair, right? Like, come on.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think if you just thrown in just a few radical politics cards in there just to break up the vehicles and the Mario Kart stuff, I think more heads would have been spun. I think people would have been very, very curious about what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't know. I've got hope for the future that when we go back to places like Amonkhet and go back to places like Girapur, we're going to be able to see more development. I think the fact that they did this travelogue set was just a huge disservice to the 3 planes that were involved, even though there were interesting seeds of story arc laid down. But I hope that they pick up and follow through.
Me too. I
think it would be sick. I think it would be really sick.
I think, yeah. Well, hey, listen, we can all hope, can't we? That's all we can do sometimes.
Look, man, I mean, we when we're sitting in a world where it's like Final Fantasy into Spider-Man into Avatar, these hooks that we've got are the things that are going to bring us back to true magic and the core of magic, right? And it's like, okay, well, Edge of Eternities was weird. It's a weird set, and I haven't been able to get into the story.
That's fair enough.
I'm going to work. I'm going to try, but it's hard. Sci-fi is not my. It's not my forte.
Yeah, that is legit. I think that I'm interested to delve into it potentially in the future as during my reading on Tarkir, there was a lot of talk about Amitav Ghosh's book Nutmeg's Curse. Lots and lots of discussion on space, which I wasn't expecting, as in like, outer space, and the sort of like the notion, this capitalist notion that the Earth is a wretched place and we are destined to not be there, and thus like all of our perspectives on what comes next is always tied up in getting away from Earth and then projecting our ideal onto what the outer world would look like. And it almost always is this either triumphant, perfect vision of colonization where there's no one to oppress and we just move suburbia onto Mars and it just looks great, or it's this grimdark nonsense of the moment that we get to space, it's post-Butlerian jihad and we're all back to cults and fascism reigns supreme, etc., etc. And there's got to be a different way of looking at the stars, baby. There's got to be.
We'll hopefully.
Yeah.
Oh man! Wow, that was an hour.
that was. Thank you for letting me yap for an hour. I'm sorry I didn't really talk more about my process.
You know what? But the thing is, that's what's fascinating to me. It's like these are such huge topics you're covering. Like, I mean, the Tarkir video and the spice trade is one of my favorite topics in the world, and I was like, being able to bring that into magic, into a context, it's like such a cool way to introduce people to concepts and ideas that they wouldn't normally get into. You hook them in somehow, and then in doing so, you bring them in and then teach them the lesson. And I love that. I think it's great, and I cannot wait to see this video. That sounds awesome.
I'll be sending it straight to you before it's out, and you can watch all 6 hours of it. And then you can give me detailed feedback to make sure that I don't destroy my career upon hitting publish.
I feel like if you haven't done that now, we're these people are here for the long haul, and I mean literal long haul.
Yeah, but we'll see. We go some interesting spaces. We'll see whether or not the liberals in the audience like being accused of having Hitler particles. We'll see.
You know what?
We'll see what the angle is.
Rack video, if it didn't get a little over the border
spicy,
that we were hoping
baby.
Yeah, a little spicy.
Oh dear. Well, thank you for having me. Bye.
Yeah. So if we should call it a show here, but God, I love talking to you so much. This is lovely. If folks wanted to find you for whatever reason, if they don't know who you are, they sure do now.
Right. Hello, folks. You can find me on Blue Sky. Actually, it's the only social media I have now. My God, do I feel healthier? I don't have Studio Ghibli Klansman on my feed anymore. Isn't that
Oh
nice?
Lord.
Yeah, so I'm just on Blue Sky, spice8rack.bluesky.social. You can also find me on YouTube at Spice8rack. Is there literally any other place you can find me? No, that's probably
No, I think that's
actually
it.
kind of it. I'm almost off the grid. I'm as off the grid as you could be for a YouTuber.
Yeah, for somebody like us who has to live in this content world, you're about as, I mean, but to be fair, that's basically where I am too. Like, I'm on Blue Sky and I'm on YouTube, and maybe I will start on Twitch, but literally, like,
Oh yeah, I got a Twitch. I forgot. Sorry, I do have a
occasion-
Twitch. I'm just rarely on it. I do apologize to all the people who are following me on there. I will get back to it. I've just been super busy.
Turns out writing the revolution takes a long time.
Oh, don't put that evil on me. If someone name drops me in their manifesto, I'm going to be royally annoyed.
Oh Lord, have
Don't
mercy.
do that, please, for God's sake.
The Subway man throws sandwiches and it's like, this is a Spicy's 8-rack.
Oh my God, he's got arrested now. Bloody
yeah,
hell.
well, of course he did. You're not going to be able to throw. Anyways, I'm going to call it a show here. Otherwise, I will do this for as long as one of your videos. And my poor editor deserves better. But with that, my friends, as always, you can find me on Blue Sky at Shivam Bhatt. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday, thanks to my editor, Dan. You can also hear me on Shivam Wheeler Love Magic or the Chronicles of Dragonlance. And remember, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.
Later.